In the heart of Medellín, a city where light and shadow danced together, was born a man who would defy the boundaries of power. Pablo Escobar, a name that inspires fear, fascination, and controversy even today. He was a father, a husband, a champion of the poor, and a tyrant to those who dared oppose him. His life was a relentless struggle, with poverty, with rivals, with authorities, and with his own dark legacy. He turned money into power, power into legend, and his legend was written in blood. Today you'll hear the story as told by the man himself, a story that begins in darkness and ends in death. Now let's listen to the life of Pablo Escobar, told by himself.
I was born in 1949, in the town of Rio Negro, Colombia, to a poor but proud family. My mother was a schoolteacher, and my father was a farmer. We were poor, but I never saw myself as helpless. From a young age, I had one goal: escape the life that had trapped my parents, become the man who would never bend to anyone. When I was a boy, I learned the art of survival in the streets of Medellín. I saw the misery, the lack of opportunities, and I knew that only money could change everything. As a teenager, I started with small-time schemes, smuggling cigarettes and selling contraband. My ambitions grew quickly. Soon I was stealing cars, forging documents, bribing cops, building a network. I saw crime as the quickest way to climb, and I embraced it. But Medellín was no easy ground. Every neighborhood had its kingpin, and alliances could crumble in an instant. I had to learn to protect myself, so I surrounded myself with men who were more than just muscle. I chose those who shared my ambition, men who saw me not just as a leader, but as the path to power. We carved out a space in Medellín, through blood and fear. It was a time when no one had heard of me, but the seeds were being planted. In the early 70s, something happened that would change everything. Cocaine. It was new, clean, a powder that could sell for hundreds of times its cost. I saw immediately that this wasn't just a product, it was a weapon. I started small, using the same routes we had established for other contraband. My men smuggled it into the US in suitcases, hidden in produce, even in the lining of clothes. It was easy money, more money than I had ever dreamed of. By 1975, the trade had exploded, and I was making millions. The money flowed in faster than I could spend it. But I knew that money alone wasn't power. Power was control, and I wanted control over the entire cocaine industry. I knew I couldn't do it alone, so I formed alliances with other smugglers, men who had their own territories, but respected my vision. We became a network, an unbreakable chain that stretched from Colombia to Miami, New York, Los Angeles. As my empire grew, I realized that my wealth had to be secured, hidden from the government and from my rivals. I bought properties all over Colombia, safe houses, farms, and apartments in Bogotá, Medellín, Cali. I had warehouses filled with cash, more than I could count. I buried millions in secret locations throughout Colombia, money that's still out there, waiting. To this day, people don't know the extent of my hidden wealth. Some of it has never been found. In Medellín, I became more than just a kingpin. I became a symbol. I invested millions in the city's slums, building houses, schools, soccer fields. I paid for hospitals, community centers, roads. The people loved me because I gave them what the government never would. I was El Patron, the man who looked after them, who fought for the poor. It wasn't charity, it was strategy. The people of Medellín became my eyes and ears. They protected me, warned me about the police, told me who was talking to my enemies. They saw me as their hero, but they also knew that I was capable of immense violence. It was a mixture of fear and loyalty that held them to me. I would give them money, gifts, jobs. But if they betrayed me, they paid with their lives. Behind closed doors, my organization was brutal. We had a code loyalty above all else. Betrayal was met with death, and not just any death. An example. I remember one lieutenant, a man named Hugo. He had served me for years, but was caught leaking information to the Cali cartel. I ordered his death, but I didn't make it quick. I wanted every man under my command to know the price of betrayal. So Hugo's body was left in a public square, a warning to anyone who thought of crossing me. These were secrets never spoken, shadows that haunted my men. By the 1980s, I had more money than I could ever spend and more power than I could contain. I was untouchable, or so I thought. But there was one thing I still craved: respect. I didn't want to be just a drug lord. I wanted to be a leader. I ran for Congress, spending millions to buy my way into the political arena. It was the only world left to conquer. I was elected, even took a seat in Congress, but the politicians saw me as nothing more than a criminal trying to play leader. The Minister of Justice, Rodrigo Larabonilla, was especially vocal against me. He called me out publicly, tried to strip me of my position, my legitimacy. So I did what I always did to my enemies. I eliminated him. Lara's assassination sent shockwaves through Colombia, and it marked the beginning of a war with the government that would consume my life. They retaliated with extradition. To me, extradition was a fate worse than death. I would never allow myself to be taken by the Americans, to rot in a foreign prison. I declared all-out war, using every tool at my disposal: bombings, kidnappings, assassinations. I unleashed a wave of terror that left Colombia bleeding. I killed politicians, judges, journalists, anyone who stood against me. And yet, it only made my enemies more determined. In 1991, I struck a deal with the Colombian government. I would surrender, but only on my terms. They agreed to let me build my own prison, La Catedral. It was a fortress, complete with a bar, a gym, a soccer field, and luxury suites. From La Catedral, I continued to run my empire, issuing orders, making deals, expanding my reach. My enemies thought I was contained, but I was still as powerful as ever. What people don't know is that La Catedral was more than just a luxury prison. It was a place of secrets. Beneath its walls, I had tunnels built, passages that led to hidden rooms filled with cash, weapons, even escape routes. I kept a private stash of explosives, knowing that if the government ever tried to take me, I could blow the place sky high. La Catedral was my fortress, my sanctuary, but it was also my insurance policy. But even my sanctuary wasn't safe. My enemies outside grew restless, and the government's patience wore thin. They wanted to move me to a real prison, to strip me of the power I still held. I knew it was time to go. One night, under the cover of darkness, I escaped, disappearing into the mountains with a handful of loyal men. Once again, I was a fugitive, hunted by the government, the cartels, and the Americans. Those final days were filled with fear and betrayal. My empire was crumbling, my allies turning against me. Men I had trusted for years, men who had pledged their loyalty, were now siding with my enemies. Even my family was at risk. My son, my wife, they lived in constant fear, moving from place to place, never knowing if they would see another day. I was hunted, not just by the government, but by my own people. They wanted my power, my wealth, my empire. The Americans poured millions into capturing me, working with the Colombian police, the military, even my rivals in the Cali cartel. I lived like a ghost, hiding in safe houses, moving through the shadows, always looking over my shoulder. I knew my time was running out, but I was determined to go out on my own terms. I kept a pistol close, ready to use it if the moment came. I would rather die by my own hand than be paraded in chains, humiliated by those who thought they had won. The day came in Medellín. They had tracked me to a small house, a place I thought was safe. But the net was closing in, and I knew it. The police stormed the building, and I ran to the rooftop, my pistol in hand. I looked out over the city that I had once ruled, the city that had loved me, feared me, hated me. I could hear the footsteps, the shouting, the sound of guns being cocked. I made a choice. I raised the pistol to my own head, and in that final moment, I took control of my fate. They say the police killed me, that I died in a shootout, but that's not the truth. The truth is that I died by my own hand, a final act of defiance, a refusal to let them take me alive. Now, from the silence beyond life, I see the legacy I left behind. They call me a monster, a criminal, a butcher. But I was more than that. I was a man who rose from nothing, who took power with his own hands, who ruled an empire that spanned continents. I was feared, yes, but I was also loved, admired by the people who saw me as a savior. My name will be remembered, cursed and glorified, feared and revered. They will tell stories about me, stories of blood and ambition, of violence and power. But they will never truly understand the world I lived in, the choices I made, the path I walked. I was Pablo Escobar, El Patron, and this is my story, told from the shadows, where I was born and where I now rest.
This was the world of Pablo Escobar, a world built on power, shadows, and ambition. He rose from nothing to become a legend, feared by millions, yet loved by those he lifted from poverty. His story is one of ruthless choices and untold wealth, but also betrayal, loss, and a final act of defiance that would seal his fate forever. Did Pablo Escobar die as a villain or a king? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you found this story as compelling as we did, hit that like button and subscribe to uncover more untold stories of power, crime, and the people who shaped history. Turn on notifications so you never miss an episode.